Masjid's chapter is one of the highlights of the book. So please, if you want to read the book, contact Prof. Aan as the director of UIII Press. Masjid has also explained how the supersized coalition ironically contribute to stability during Jokowi, but also undermine the horizontal check and balance system. But how in Prabowo's era, you have similar supersized presidency, but it doesn't lead to stability, at least in the civil society. This is something interesting. Anyone paying attention to Indonesian politics and Indonesian politics in general should read Masjid's article. There's also another article at the Giga Hamburg Journal. You should read those in pair, I believe. Without further ado, we have Dr. Rendy as our discussion. Welcome to UIII Mas. We will have time for you as much as you want to comment on our book. Thank you, please, Mas Rendy.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thank you so much for the discussion of this book's launching. It's quite, my first impression when I read the book is that the flow is quite fascinating with the opening chapter written by Mas Farish that try to bind together all of the cases across the region, and with the historical framing that try to see the similarities and also the differences on the elections in Southeast Asia. I think that's quite important thing, just to know that each country related each other politically. So I have made some of the notes. This is part of my job here. First, I would like to congratulate all of the authors, of course, because this kind of work on the Southeast Asian elections in book or in a volume are not many. My reading, probably the classic one, is Robert Taylor, 1996, if I'm not mistaken. And then the last one, the most contemporary one, probably Lee Morgan Besser in 2016. A lot of scholars also wrote in an academic journal, but not, in a volume, just like book. So I do recommend that this book should sit in your bookshelves. And then also the time to publish is quite timely, even though I know that this draft probably started in 2023, right? But then the publication of this book is quite timely because of some worrying trend in Southeast Asia. The first one is about the much more complex regime transition, right? It is not only happening in Indonesia, just like highlighted by Mas Jayadi, but also across the region. Yeah, we see the Malaysian politics that is quite messy, and then also in the Thailand as well. It's a bit unfortunate that the Thailand is not covered in this book, because Thailand has everything to discuss right now. And then also, it also happens in Philippines. So the instability on the region is clearly important to discuss further. And this book helps the reader to know the updated picture, or the nuance update on the Southeast Asian politics. The second one is about the technology. I think it's quite changing all of the game in electoral spectrum across the region, right? The Philippine chapter is quite wonderful to capture how the disinformation and the misinformation, or also the AI-generated content that produce deepfakes, that's quite very smooth, incredibly real, right? As the political campaign, part of the material for campaign. So I think the Philippine chapter is also quite wonderful because the technology should be discussed or should be assessed as the part that help a lot of authoritarian leaning figures to win the election. Okay, we can see how Bongbong Marcos Jr., the rising of his authoritarian image that then transformed into a very different, entirely different image was mostly helped by the TikTok or social media. And then the third one that is quite important in Southeast Asian region is about the rising of what I call it as intergenerational contest. So the rising of youth voters present a totally different challenges from contestant, right? So we can see in Indonesia, for example, we can see how Prabowo try to, attract the Generation Z or the millennials by dancing, for example, right? And then by, portraying his cat named Bobby Kartanegara that has nearly 1 million followers in Instagram. So I think that's quite telling, right? How important the youth for the politics right now. So I think these three important development on the region addressed all together with this book. And then I also see that in terms of the geographic coverage, that's a bit unfortunate. I mentioned it before that the Thailand was upset because again, right now there is an ongoing struggle between the civilian rule against the military rule. That's quite, I think that's become day-to-day routine of life in Thailand right now, facing such authoritarian figure. And then also we can see that it illustrates so many the tensions the book aims to address. But then when I read the title of the book, the complete title is Elections in Southeast Asia, Prospects for Freedom, Civil Society and Protection of Human Rights. This is something that I would love to appreciate because I think the authors try to reduce, right, to treat election just merely about the mechanism or the tool or the vehicle for legitimating the government, right? But then because of the phrases of prospects for freedom, civil society, and protection of human rights, so I saw that the word prospects here relate with so many things lingering in Southeast Asian politics turbulences nowadays. Maybe that's why the design of this book is quite dark and black. Maybe because the prospect is a bit, unclear for the Southeast Asian future. So what I mean that the word prospect has a dual meaning, right? It maybe reflects a hope, or it shows or it reflects the anxieties of the authors, probably because of everybody try to portraying their own future in the country. Okay, they could not see whether or not the democracy still persists or declining. Most of the scholars agree that Southeast Asian politics right now is in trouble. I think that's the thing that most of all agree upon. But then also it presents a hope because some of the chapter here try to portray the prospect of, for example, written by Amalinda Safirani that try to highlight the potential movement coming from grassroots, coming from civil society. I think that's the thing that could, give us hope about the future of Southeast Asia. In Indonesia right now, we also see that the only one opposition, Pak Jayadi has explained a lot of the crisis of oppositional or formal oppositional figure in Indonesia. But then we have a lot of public oppositional, right? Public figure or even social media influencer that try to gather a lot of activism into the street of protest. Okay. So I think that's the important thing on how to see or read the word prospect here. And then it also presents us some of the questions, provocation for all of us, That's is it truly, is an election truly of height of freedom, right? Or paradoxically, it equally could be said as a part that has a lot of role to the freedom's erosion, for example, right? Because the rising of authoritarian figures clearly affects a lot of democratic spectrum and also freedom of expression in the country. And then also it inspires for the future work. I see that some of the chapter here potentially could be expanded further for some of the things that also still in the electoral frame, but also but not limited to that. For example, the discussion, the very good discussion from Pak Jayadi about the presidentialism and multi-party system in Indonesia. And I think the thing that rarely studied in Southeast Asia right now is the formation of alliance as a part of the election, right? So the pre-election process is quite complex, okay? Because a lot of scholars only focusing on the post-electoral, the result, but then the setting or the precondition before the election happens, I think that's quite telling on how, for example, Prabowo try to, borrow Jokowi's formula or borrow Jokowi's charisma, and then also try to gather a lot of volunteers or something like that. And then I called it with my colleague Rendy in one of our article about the toxic alliance that become the new feature in Southeast Asia, right? It happened in Malaysia when Anwar Ibrahim and then built a coalition with his own long nemesis from UMNO, right? I think that's quite extraordinary. Also, it happens in Indonesia in 2019, right? When Prabowo received the offer as a Minister of Defense from Prabowo. So I think the alliance making is quite a thing to assess more. And then also the next one is about what I call earlier about the rise of the youth, because studying voters is also still a rare thing. I think Burhanuddin Muhtadi last month published a very good article about the complacent Democrat. He tried to answer the question on how Gen Z capture the democracy, something like that. So the perceived democracy, perceived values of democracy, and how they participate in the election, how they vote certain figure and not other figures, is something that needs to be discussed further, because it could not be solved only by analyzing the survey figures, but also the structural factors, probably also the historical thing that shape how our generation Z voters has entirely different thinking about the democracy, about the politics, about the routine of the government in their head compared to previous generations. So all in all, overall, I see that this is also part of the book that needs probably for the future project. And also the last one I would like to highlight is the discussion between result, electoral result versus electoral outcome. I think this is very tricky and could be, deceive all of us. For example, in Thailand, the result of latest election in Thailand bring party, Move Forward Party, led by Pita Limjaroenrat, won the election. But then the outcome of the election, because of the military, because of the faction of military that are quite strong in the parliament, they then disbanded or banned the party. So Pita Limjaroenrat could not be prime minister, right? So the result of the election totally different from the outcome of the election. So it also happens in Indonesia, right? We may vote for Jokowi in 2019 and didn't vote at all to Prabowo. So Prabowo is nobody voted for, but then we saw that the government suddenly contained two contestants of the election. So I think it's nearly happened right now in Indonesia in 2024 election. After PDIP, for example, tried to, Prabowo tried to attract PDIP to join the government, and then also Anies Baswedan, and so on and so on. So I think that's also the last one that potentially could be discussed for the project on the book. So I think that's all. Mas Gede, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mas Rendy. That was such an astute observation about the book, yeah, about the missing chapter, but also very generous comments for further refinement of the next possible project. Yeah. I think Mas Farish has something. Please, Mas Farish.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments. I'd just like to pick up on 2 points that both Rendy and Brother Jayadi mentioned earlier. And this connects to how we started the book. We tried to locate these developments in long history. And I think what we are seeing in Southeast Asia now defies conventional understanding of political theory and political science. But it should not be unfamiliar to those who know Southeast Asia. And I think this is the theme of, again, imperial politics or feudal politics. And I think this is what we are really seeing in the region, how democracy is actually being used to reinstitute and renormalize feudal politics. And this is where all these countries that are in the book come together. Because we see this in the Philippines, we see this in Malaysia, we see this in also Thailand, Indonesia. The kind of rise of populist authoritarianism, which ironically uses the tools of democracy in order to entrench itself. Now the question we need to ask is this: haven't we learned from our past? Yeah. And why are we repeating this again? Why is the public repeating this again? And how come it has become so easy for aspiring authoritarian leaders to seek political mandate through elections? Now, of course, we have historical examples. We know that the Nazi Party came to power through elections, but it was through the manipulation of anxiety and fear. Yeah. Because crisis helped them win power. We don't have crisis here. So what do we have instead? We have janji manis. Yeah. So the dream of a happy, prosperous future together. The chapter on both Indonesia and the chapter on Philippines talks a lot about nostalgia. Yeah, in the case of Philippines, the Marcos days are now being recast as a happy time. And we see this in several Southeast Asian countries today. So while Jayadi calls it imperial politics, I call it Dewa Raja politics. Yeah, and Dewa Raja politics is coming back. And this has been our tragedy in Southeast Asia. We are always looking for the Ratu Adil. But the Ratu Adil comes with a big price tag. And the price tag is you lose your freedom. Now, to link that to Gen Z, I think, Phillips, we have to do another book. Yeah, because we have to do another one. Because this is important. The next round of elections will come within 2 years. Yeah, in many parts of Southeast Asia, where Gen Z will increasingly play an important role. Now, one fatal mistake that political analysts make is to assume that there is similarity and parity between generations. That's not true. Gen Z are a different generation. If you are 20 years old now, you have been brought up on Netflix. The world you know is a world of apocalyptic disasters, zombies, COVID. That's your world. You have no recollection of the 1960s social revolutions. You don't know any of that. The only one you know is the world that has been shaped by social media. And this generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are the ones who are most shaped by social media. Political leaders know that, and that's why in the case of Indonesia, Sylvie is working on Indonesian social media in elections. Philippines, Malaysia, social media is the next battleground. The battleground is for Gen Z to win them. And so the language that we see, the language of stability, prosperity, inclusivity, like Jeremy said, everyone is in. Everyone is in. The promise is to give everyone a place. This is the feeling. But the net cost is that there is now no resistance to that. Now, the reason why this works is because this inclusivity works on the politics of feudal patronage. So if everyone is in, everyone gets a cut. So if religious groups come in, you get concessions. NGOs come in, you get concessions. You get contracts. You get mining license and stuff like that, right? And this is a very interesting phenomenon. It's the politics of patronage. So the question that you raised, Rendy, is interesting. In other parts of the world, in the developed north, in Europe, for example, if you win a majority of 55%, that's fantastic. It's enough. Wow, 55%. But here, we do 55% is nothing. It has to be 99%, or better still, 100%. Now, that is the mindset of the Dewa Raja. Yeah? Complete control. And if our societies don't understand what this means, because we've been told that no opposition is good. No opposition is good. Because from childhood, even at school, our parents tell us, don't question your teacher. Yeah? Don't raise your voice. Don't be provocative. So we are culturally conditioned to accept authoritarianism. So maybe this is a question I can throw back at both of you. Is this a kind of cultural weakness that we have in Southeast Asia? Is Southeast Asia a region that is naturally, predisposed to this kind of neo-feudal politics? And if that is, then that's why the book cover is black, because it means that there will not be a golden dawn. Gen Z, Gen A will happily support authoritarianism if that authoritarianism can package itself with the language of political correctness and wokeness and inclusivity. Then you have a place, and you can be part of that Dewa Raja universe. So this is a serious book which I think raises much, much deeper questions that not only us in political science, but political sociology, political anthropology, we need to ask these very serious questions very soon. So thank you for your intervention, Joe.
Thank you, Professor. I think that's also a great observation. Yeah, patrimonialism, patrimonial politics has never withered away from Indonesia.